In the late years of the 23rd century, humanity had achieved the unthinkable. After centuries of struggle, war, and growth, Earth had become the center of a sprawling interstellar civilization. Spacefaring humans were no longer isolated pockets of colonies, they were a force to be reckoned with. Yet, as they expanded into the far reaches of the galaxy, they found themselves on the cusp of something greater, a moment that would define their legacy. The story begins with the mysterious discovery of a relic, an ancient star map, hidden deep within the ruins of a long-forgotten alien race. The map, once thought to be an elaborate hoax, was found by a team of human archaeologists and scientists on a desolate world located at the galaxy's edge. Dr. Elena Voss, a leading archaeologist from the United Earth Science Academy, made the breakthrough. Her team had been excavating a seemingly insignificant planet known as Pax 9 when they unearthed the map. Elena stood over the holographic projection, her eyes wide in disbelief. The map was not just a guide to distant stars, it was a roadmap to the very heart of an ancient empire, far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. The symbols on the map were of a civilization long erased from the galaxy's memory. The humans had been unaware of their existence until now. "This is it," Elena whispered. "The key to everything." The map was detailed, pointing to a series of star systems that spanned across the galaxy. Most notable was a central region marked as the Eclipse Core, an area thought to be a dead zone, empty of life and stars. According to the ancient script, however, it was the heart of a vast empire that spanned eons, now abandoned but still brimming with untold riches and technology. The map was both a warning and an invitation. The United Earth government, eager to secure the advantage, authorized an immediate expedition to explore the area. It was a massive undertaking, one that would require the resources of every nation, corporation, and military faction across the stars. The mission would be led by Admiral Riker Hayes, a seasoned strategist known for his daring and ruthlessness in combat. Riker, once a decorated hero of the Soul War, had become disillusioned with the bureaucratic stagnation of Earth's leadership, but he saw this expedition as a chance to change humanity's destiny forever. The expedition, dubbed Project Dawn, was set into motion. A fleet of human warships, research vessels, and resource transporters was assembled, ready to journey into the unknown. Elena Voss was appointed as the lead scientist on the mission, tasked with deciphering the alien language and uncovering the secrets hidden in the map. Together with Admiral Hayes and a diverse team of engineers, pilots, and explorers, Elena prepared for the greatest adventure humanity had ever undertaken. As the fleet entered the outer regions of the galaxy, a sense of excitement filled the air. The crew knew they were about to venture into uncharted territory, but they had no idea what dangers or wonders awaited them. There were rumors of ancient civilizations, powerful weapons, and alien technologies beyond comprehension, but there were also whispers of traps and deadly creatures guarding the remnants of the ancient empire. "What do we do if we encounter resistance?" one of the officers asked, his voice betraying a hint of concern. "We adapt," Riker Hayes responded, his voice steady. "Humanity has always found a way. And we will again." The fleet made its way deeper into the unknown, the darkness of space growing more oppressive with every light year they crossed. Soon, they approached the Eclipse Core, a region that, despite its dead appearance, seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. There was something alive within the void, something that had been waiting for this moment. As they entered the system, the first signs of activity became apparent. Unmarked ships, ancient in design but advanced in technology, appeared on the scanners. They were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Silent, powerful, and eerily silent, they loomed in the distance, their presence inexplicable. "This isn't right," Elena said, feeling a chill run down her spine. "This is a trap. We've been expected." Admiral Hayes turned to her, his expression grim. "Brace yourselves. We're about to make history." And so, the first steps toward the rise of the human empire were taken, not with conquest, but with the discovery of something far greater than they had ever imagined. They were no longer just explorers. They were players on a galactic stage where every move could alter the future of the stars themselves. But as they moved closer to the heart of the Eclipse Core, the fleet's sensors began to pick up strange, fluctuating energy signatures, almost as if the very fabric of spacetime was being manipulated. Something was awakening, something old and powerful. Something human minds could scarcely comprehend. The fleet had crossed the threshold into the heart of the Eclipse core, but now they found themselves ensnared by a mystery far beyond their expectations. The ancient ships, which had appeared on their scanners as mere relics of a long-forgotten civilization, now revealed themselves to be far more than simple ghosts of the past. They were alive. Captain Cale Ramirez, the tactical officer aboard the Lusitania, watched the readings on his console in disbelief. The once dormant ships, now swarming like predatory creatures, activated their systems, sending out signals across the fleet. In an instant, the whole formation was surrounded by a web of electromagnetic pulses, neutralizing all communications and rendering the human vessels temporarily blind. Riker Hayes's voice boomed over the fleet-wide comms, his tone calm but commanding. "Status report, Captain." "We're being surrounded, Admiral," Cale said, his voice tight. "We can't raise shields, and communications are jammed. These ships aren't just automated. They're alive." Elena Voss, standing near the central control hub, listened intently, her mind racing. These ancient vessels were not merely remnants, they were sentient, guardians left behind by a civilization that had been lost to time. Whoever, or whatever, had left them here had not only built these ships, but also encoded them with artificial intelligence capable of manipulating space itself. The very fabric of reality around them seemed to bend, the stars flickering in and out of focus as though they were being viewed through the lens of a cosmic illusion. "Admiral, we need to understand what's happening," Elena said urgently, moving to Riker's side. "These ships are more than just machines. They're protecting something. We have to find out what." Riker turned to her with a nod. "Prepare your team. We're going in." In a series of tense moments, the fleet's ships began to maneuver toward a large, dark structure floating at the center of the Eclipse core, a massive, artificial construct, its surface sleek and perfectly symmetrical, yet its design defied human comprehension. It seemed as though it had grown from the fabric of the cosmos itself, an incomprehensible fusion of technology and architecture. As the human vessels approached, the structure's surface shifted. Panels opened, revealing a gateway leading inside. Without hesitation, Admiral Hayes ordered the fleet to dock. The tension in the air was palpable, no one knew what awaited them inside, but they were beyond the point of retreat. Elena, accompanied by a small team of engineers, navigated through the ship's corridors, which hummed with an alien energy. The walls glowed faintly with an iridescent light, and as they passed, the doors automatically slid open to reveal long, empty hallways. The air was thick with an eerie silence, but the feeling of something watching them lingered. Despite the desolation, Elena couldn't shake the sensation that they were being guided. Whatever this ancient empire had left behind, it was not meant to be forgotten. "This place," Elena whispered. "It's like a temple, but it's made of metal." Her voice echoed through the hall, but there was no answer. The only sound was the hum of the ship itself. The team continued deeper into the bowels of the structure, where they finally came upon a vast chamber, its size beyond anything human engineering had ever conceived. At the center of the chamber was a massive, pulsating core, surrounded by intricate machinery that seemed to be both organic and mechanical in nature. "This is it," Elena said, awe and fear mixing in her voice. "This is the heart of the Empire." The core seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats, and as Elena stepped closer, her hand outstretched, the air around her began to crackle with energy. She had no idea what she was about to trigger, but instinct told her that touching the core would either unlock untold power or unravel the very fabric of their existence. Just as her fingers brushed against the surface of the core, a voice, ancient, deep, and unintelligible, echoed through the chamber. The language was unlike any human tongue, yet Elena felt its meaning resonate within her mind, as though the core itself was communicating with her. The words were foreign, but the message was clear, "We are the Guardians. You are the chosen, *." Before Elena could respond, a violent tremor shook the chamber. The ships surrounding the human fleet outside began to pulse with energy, their weapons coming online. It was as if the core had triggered a defense mechanism, one that was now fully aware of their presence. "Everyone, get to the ships!" Riker's voice echoed over the comms, panic creeping into his tone for the first time. "The core's activation has triggered the defenses. We're not alone anymore." The ancient guardians had been awakened, and they would not allow anyone to take what had once been theirs. The crew scrambled back toward their vessels, the sound of alien weaponry charging in the distance, but it was clear that this was only the beginning. The rise of the human empire had begun, but it was not without its price. The fleet, once filled with anticipation and hope, now found itself on the edge of annihilation. The ancient guardians, massive ships that had long lain dormant, were awakening, their energies building to terrifying levels. The human vessels, previously confident in their technological superiority, now faced an enemy that was not only more advanced but also seemingly alive. It was a battle between the human spirit and an ancient empire that had once ruled the galaxy. Admiral Riker Hayes stood at the command center of the Lusitania, his fingers tightly gripping the armrests of his chair as the warning alarms blared. On the main view screen, the silhouettes of the ancient ships grew larger, their forms shifting in the darkness of space like looming titans. "We're outgunned," Captain Cale Ramirez reported, his voice strained. "The Guardians' weapons are unlike anything we've seen. They're capable of manipulating space, disrupting our shields, scrambling our targeting systems. We can't fight back." Riker's eyes narrowed, a grim determination settling in his chest. "We don't need to fight them directly. We need to buy time for Elena and her team to unlock the secrets of the core. If we can take control of the heart, we can turn the tide." Elena's voice crackled over the comms, filled with urgency. "Admiral, we've accessed some of the data here, but the core it's like a living organism. Every time I think I've made progress, the system changes. We need more time." Riker nodded, though he knew that every second spent in this hellish standoff brought them closer to disaster. "Understood, Dr. Voss. We're moving into position to cover your retreat." Outside, the Lusitania and the other ships of the fleet began to take evasive action. The ancient guardians unleashed their first wave of fire, a barrage of energy beams that tore through the space between them, disintegrating asteroids in their path and setting a deadly course for the human fleet. The Lusitania evaded the first few strikes, but the relentless bombardment quickly overwhelmed their shields. "We're taking hits," the weapons officer yelled. "Hull integrity at 60%. Riker's mind raced. They couldn't keep this up. The Guardians' weapons were far more advanced, and their abilities to warp space itself were overwhelming. He needed a new plan, something to shift the balance in their favor. "Prepare a countermeasure," Riker ordered. "Activate the experimental drive. Let's see if it can give us an edge." The experimental drive was a bold move, a technology developed during the Soul War but never tested in live combat. It was designed to manipulate gravity fields, allowing ships to slip in and out of spacetime, effectively teleporting short distances. It was risky, dangerous, even, but in this situation, it was their only hope. Moments later, the Lusitania vanished from the radar, reappearing just behind one of the ancient ships. The crew held their breath as Riker barked his orders. "Target their engines. Focus all firepower on their propulsion system." The human warships unleashed a coordinated barrage, their energy weapons striking the rear of the Guardian ship. The ancient vessel flared with energy, groaning under the impact, but it did not fall. Instead, it retaliated, turning its massive weapons toward the Lusitania and firing a devastating pulse of energy. The pulse collided with the ship's shields, sending shockwaves through the crew. "We can't hold much longer," Cale shouted. "The shields are failing." Outside the Lusitania, the other ships continued to engage the Guardians, their desperate attempts to break through the defenses proving futile. Each shot from the ancient vessels seemed to warp the very fabric of reality, making the human ships' movements unpredictable and chaotic. As the battle raged, Elena's voice came through once more, strained and urgent. "I'm unlocking something. I think it's a control node. If I can connect to it, I might be able to override the core's defense systems. Riker's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the turning point. Elena, you have to hurry. We can't hold them off for much longer. With a steady hand, Elena continued to work, each keystroke taking her deeper into the ancient technology. Her mind raced to process the data flooding her thoughts. The core was more than just a machine, it was a link to something far more powerful. It was a neural network, a vast interconnected web of consciousness spread across the galaxy, capable of influencing entire star systems. If she could access the central node, she might be able to turn the Guardians into allies rather than enemies. But the core fought back. The more Elena tried to break through, the more resistance she encountered. The ancient intelligence was self-aware, and it didn't want to be controlled. It was a battle of wills, human ingenuity against a power that had once ruled the stars. Almost there, Elena murmured to herself, her fingers flying across the interface. Just a little more. Outside, the situation grew more desperate. The fleet was on the brink of collapse. The Guardians' weapons continued to bombard the human ships, tearing apart their hulls and forcing them into a retreat. Then, just as it seemed that all hope was lost, Elena's voice came through the comms, filled with awe and relief. I did it. The control node is mine. I've overridden the core's defenses. The Guardians are stopping. A moment of silence passed, and then, as if on cue, the ancient ships ceased their attacks. The energy pulses stopped, and the eerie hum of the core faded away. The Guardians hovered in place, their once menacing forms now still and inactive. Admiral, Elena said, her voice calm but tinged with exhaustion, the core is under our control. The Guardians are dormant, for now. Riker let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. We did it, he muttered. We've won. But as the humans regrouped and took stock of their losses, they knew the true battle had just begun. The core held the key to an empire, one that could either bring about humanity's ascendancy or its destruction. And though the Guardians had paused their assault, the ancient intelligence that powered the core was still watching. Still calculating. Humanity had awoken an ancient power, and now, they had to decide how to wield it. The silence in the aftermath of the battle was unsettling. The once thunderous roar of energy blasts had faded, leaving the human fleet hovering in the cold void, surrounded by the inactive Guardians. They had narrowly escaped annihilation, but now they found themselves in an entirely new kind of danger. The Lusitania drifted quietly in the shadow of the ancient structure, its crew licking their wounds and grappling with the magnitude of what had just occurred. Admiral Riker Hayes stood in front of the view screen, staring at the dormant Guardians in the distance. A sense of unease gnawed at him. Victory had been achieved, but at what cost? He turned to his crew, his voice steady but filled with the weight of his decision. Send a fleet-wide message. Inform every ship to hold position. We'll regroup and begin analyzing the core. We need to understand what we've just taken control of. The comms officer nodded, and the message was transmitted, reaching every corner of the fleet. As Riker's mind worked through the implications of their actions, Elena Voss and her team began their investigation into the heart of the core. Their first priority was to understand what they had unlocked, and more importantly, how it could be used. They had control of a weapon, no, an empire's worth of technology, spread across the galaxy, but it was a double-edged sword. We have to proceed cautiously, Elena said as she stood in the center of the core's control room, the holographic interface around her flickering with alien symbols. She adjusted her glasses, sweat trickling down her forehead. The core's network isn't just a machine, it's a neural entity. I'm not sure how far I can push it before it pushes back. Riker stood at the door, watching her, his expression unreadable. We're not here to make friends with it, Elena. We're here to harness its power. Elena paused, then nodded reluctantly. She knew Riker was right. Humanity was now in possession of a force that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. The question was, how far were they willing to go to control it? Outside, the remaining ships of the fleet were busy repairing damage, but the energy readings from the core continued to fluctuate. There was something strange about the way the Guardians now hovered in place. They were passive, but there was a strange, almost sentient quality to their stillness, as if they were waiting for something, or someone. "We've got another anomaly," Cale Ramirez reported from the bridge. "One of the Guardians is sending out a distress signal. It's faint, but it's there." Riker's eyes narrowed. "A distress signal? From one of them?" "Yes, sir," Cale confirmed. "It's transmitting on an ancient frequency, something only the core would recognize. It's almost like a call for help." Elena's voice crackled over the comms, her tone urgent. "Admiral, I've found something. The core's systems aren't just dormant, they're interconnected with something beyond our reach. I think the Guardians were created to guard it, not protect the core itself, but something buried even deeper." "What are you saying?" Riker asked. "The core isn't the Empire's heart, it's the key to something else," Elena replied. "There's another structure, another system that the Guardians are protecting. And the distress signal? It's coming from there." The revelation sent a chill down Riker's spine. If the Guardians had been guarding something else, then what was it? What had they awakened, and what consequences would it have for humanity? Riker immediately gave the order to launch a reconnaissance mission. He couldn't afford to ignore this new lead. He needed answers, and fast. Minutes later, a small shuttle, the Peregrine, detached from the Lusitania. Piloted by Lieutenant Sarah Bishop, the shuttle made its way to the location indicated by the distress signal, a dark patch of space that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. As the shuttle approached, the crew could see the outlines of a second structure, massive, shaped like a towering spire, and seemingly made of the same strange, living material as the core. "Admiral, this is Bishop," came the voice over the comms. "We've reached the coordinates. The structure is massive, but I'm detecting something unusual. The energy readings from the spire are off the charts. This isn't just a building, it's a source of power." Riker stood, his jaw tightening. "Proceed with caution, Lieutenant. We need to know what we're dealing with. Get a scan of the area, but don't make contact unless absolutely necessary." The shuttle began to orbit the spire, sending out waves of scans. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered before. The structure seemed to be absorbing energy from the surrounding space, drawing power from a source beyond the galaxy itself. It was as if the spire were alive, feeding on the energy of the stars. As the shuttle's sensors penetrated deeper, they uncovered something far more disturbing. Hidden within the spire was a vast chamber, and within that chamber, what appeared to be an ancient entity, alive, but encased in a crystalline prison. "We found something," Lieutenant Bishop's voice trembled with disbelief. "It's alive, Admiral. There's something, or someone, inside that spire. It's sentient." Riker's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, alive?" "Sir, I don't know how to explain it," Bishop replied. "But it's like, the spire is a prison. And whatever's inside it is aware." Elena's voice came through the comms, shaky but determined. "Admiral, this is exactly what I feared. The core was never the power center, it was the gatekeeper. The true power, the one the Guardians were protecting, is inside that spire." Riker clenched his fists. This was worse than they had imagined. The power of the ancient empire was not just a tool, it was a living, malevolent force, and it had been waiting for a millennium to be released. They had not merely uncovered an empire. They had uncovered a nightmare. And now, humanity was caught in the middle of it. The truth had set off a chain reaction, and now, the galaxy hung in the balance. The spire, a dark and enigmatic structure, had revealed itself to be more than just a relic. It was a prison holding an entity so powerful that even the Guardians, the ancient protectors of this forgotten empire, had been designed solely to guard it. As Riker stared at the flickering data streams from the Peregrine, a deep unease gripped him. They had triggered something, but what had they truly unleashed? "Admiral," Elena's voice crackled over the comms. I've been running diagnostics on the core's data banks. The entity inside the spire, it's old. Older than anything we know. It's the origin of the Guardians, the architects of the Empire. And I think it's still alive, but trapped. It was sealed away long ago, locked behind layers of energy shields and the power of the core itself. This was never meant to be disturbed. Riker's brow furrowed. You're saying that thing inside the spire is the source of the Empire's power? Elena hesitated, then replied, her voice heavy. Yes. The Guardians were created to protect it, to prevent anyone from accessing its consciousness. The core is a conduit for that power. And now that we've awakened it, I don't know what will happen next. This entity isn't just an ancient ruler, it's something far beyond that. I fear it might have control over more than just the Guardians. It might have the power to manipulate entire systems, control the very fabric of reality. Riker took a deep breath, his mind racing. This was no longer just about humanity's rise. They had unlocked a force capable of changing the course of history, perhaps even the fabric of existence itself. Whatever this entity was, it was more than a mere relic of a lost civilization. It was a weapon. We need to contain it, Elena, Riker said, his voice firm. Whatever this thing is, we can't allow it to take control of the fleet. Or worse, of the galaxy. Elena's tone turned grim. I'm not sure we can. We've already triggered its attention. The spire is alive, it's connected to the entity. It can sense us. We're too close to it now. If we try to shut it down, it will retaliate. In the depths of space, a subtle hum resonated through the fleet. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder, a deep vibration that seemed to warp the fabric of reality itself. The Guardians, who had been inert for so long, began to stir. Slowly, they turned toward the spire, their weapons reactivating with terrifying precision. Admiral, the Guardians are moving, Cale Ramirez reported from the bridge, his voice tinged with fear. They're aligning with the spire. It's like they're responding to the entity's call. Riker's pulse quickened. They're not attacking. They're waiting for something. We need to figure out what's going on inside that spire. The fleet shifted position, moving closer to the spire under the protection of the Guardians. They could no longer afford to delay. Elena's team had to find a way to understand the entity inside the prison before it became too late. Meanwhile, on the Peregrine, Lieutenant Bishop and her crew were still stationed near the spire, performing scans and gathering data. The entity inside, though still encased in crystalline energy, was not completely dormant. Its presence could be felt through the walls of the shuttle, a presence so ancient and vast that it felt as if it had existed outside of time itself. Bishop, report, Riker commanded, his voice clipped with urgency. We've been trying to make contact, sir, Bishop replied, her voice strained. The scans show an energy field surrounding the entity. It's sentient, Admiral. It knows we're here. I can't explain it, but it's aware. And it's communicating. Riker's eyes narrowed. Communicating? How? It's subtle, Bishop said. Not through words, but through a pulse, a frequency that resonates with our minds. At first, we thought it was a malfunction, but it's too intentional. I don't know how, but it's trying to establish a connection. And from what we're seeing in the readings, it's calling to us. Calling to humanity. Riker's stomach twisted. What was this thing trying to do? Why would it call out to them, of all species? Elena, he said, his voice tight. What does it want? There was a long pause before Elena's voice came over the comms. I've been researching everything I can about the entity's nature. The core's data is sparse, but there's one thing that's clear, it doesn't just want to control. It wants to be freed. It wants to merge with us, to use humanity as a vessel. Merge with us? Riker repeated, incredulous. What do you mean? It wants to enter our minds, our bodies, Elena explained. The spire was built to keep it imprisoned, but it wasn't just a prison, it was a containment field designed to prevent it from influencing others. This entity is an ancient intelligence that can assimilate civilizations, control minds, reshape reality. It's not just a ruler. It's a force of nature, a living being that can bend everything to its will. Riker felt a cold sweat on the back of his neck. If what Elena said was true, then humanity was facing something far beyond any enemy they had ever encountered. The power to reshape reality itself was not something that could be wielded lightly, it was something that could destroy entire worlds with a thought. "We can't let it have that power," Riker said, his voice resolute. "Elena, you need to shut it down, or we'll never have control again." "It's not that simple," Elena replied. "The entity's power is integrated into the core. It's feeding off the energy we've already unlocked. We've crossed a threshold, Riker. There's no going back now. The only option is to face it. Either we control it, or it controls us." In that moment, Riker realized that they had reached a turning point. The human race had been thrust into a battle not just for survival, but for their very souls. They had awakened something that could tear apart the fabric of existence itself. And now, they had no choice but to confront the ancient power of the Spire, and whatever it was that lay dormant within. Humanity had begun its ascent to the stars. But in the shadows of the galaxy, the true challenge was just beginning. The tension aboard the Lusitania was palpable. Every crew member could feel the looming presence of the entity inside the Spire, its dark pulse vibrating through their bones. The fate of humanity had never been so uncertain. The core had granted them power beyond imagining, but at a terrible price. The entity, once imprisoned, now knew of their existence, and its hunger for freedom and control was growing with each passing moment. "We're not going to survive this if we don't do something fast," Cale Ramirez said from the command bridge, his eyes darting between the flickering readouts. "The Guardians have fully aligned with the Spire. It's like they're preparing for something. We don't know how long we can keep them from turning on us." Riker stood at the helm, his hands clenched into fists. His mind raced. Elena had confirmed that the entity wasn't just a passive observer, it had already begun to probe their minds, seeking a way to breach their defenses, to make its presence known. The Guardians had already stopped attacking, but Riker knew it wasn't out of mercy. They were waiting for the signal to initiate a full-scale invasion of the human fleet. "We can't wait for them to make the first move," Riker finally said. "We need to confront the entity now, before it fully merges with the Guardians. Before it becomes too powerful to stop." Elena's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with exhaustion. "Riker, this is madness. We're not equipped to fight this thing. We've only scratched the surface of what it can do. It's trying to bond with us, use us as vessels for its power. If we fight it head-on, it will destroy us." "We have no choice," Riker replied, his voice steady despite the knot of dread forming in his chest. "We can't allow it to control us. We have to find a way to sever the link, cut off its connection to the core." "What if that doesn't work?" Elena asked. "What if it doesn't just control us, it controls everything?" The implications of her words hung heavily in the air. The entity was not just a conqueror, it was a corruptor. It could control not only their minds, but entire star systems, entire realities. The Guardians, the core, and the very fabric of space could be manipulated by its will. "We have one shot at this," Riker said, a plan slowly coming together in his mind. "I'll lead a team down to the Spire. If we can get close enough to the entity, I believe we can sever its control over the Guardians. But we need to move fast." "Wait," Elena interjected. "What if it wants you to come? What if the Spire is drawing you in?" Riker didn't hesitate. "Then we'll have to be smarter than it. We can't afford to back down." A surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Riker knew the risks. Going down to the Spire meant stepping into the heart of the enemy's power. It would expose them to the entity's influence in ways they couldn't fully understand. But it was their only option. Within hours, a small, heavily armed strike team was assembled. Riker, Cale, Elena, and a handful of the fleet's best soldiers would make the journey down to the spire's surface. They were equipped with special suits designed to shield them from the entity's influence, but there were no guarantees. The spire was ancient, its energy fields unpredictable, and the entity's reach seemed to extend beyond what they could control. As the team descended in a shuttle toward the spire's surface, Riker watched the massive structure grow larger in the viewport. The smooth, black exterior of the spire seemed almost organic, pulsating with an unsettling rhythm. It was as if the spire was alive, and as they neared, Riker couldn't shake the feeling that it was aware of their presence. "Admiral, we're approaching the landing zone," Lieutenant Bishop said from the shuttle's cockpit. "The energy readings are off the charts. We're not sure what's waiting for us down there, but we're about to find out." The shuttle touched down on the surface with a soft thud. Riker's heart raced. They were here. This was it, the final confrontation with the entity that could shape the fate of the galaxy. The team disembarked, stepping onto the smooth, jet-black surface of the spire. The air was thick with static, and the ground beneath their boots hummed with an otherworldly energy. The entrance to the spire was a massive archway, surrounded by swirling energy fields that flickered and shifted with each passing moment. "This is it," Riker said. "We go in, find the heart of the entity, and sever the connection. No turning back." As they moved deeper into the spire, the walls seemed to ripple with energy. The path before them was long and winding, illuminated by an eerie glow. The closer they got to the center, the more intense the feeling of being watched grew. It was as if the entity itself was stirring, sensing their every move. "Admiral," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "It's calling to me. I can feel it." Riker's heart skipped a beat. He could feel it too, an oppressive presence, an overwhelming sense of dread. The entity wasn't just a force, it was alive in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. And now, it was reaching out to them, probing their thoughts, trying to pull them into its embrace. "Stay focused," Riker said, his voice firm. "We're almost there." The deeper they went, the more the walls of the spire seemed to close in on them. The air grew colder, heavier, as though the spire itself was drawing their very energy into its depths. And then, they reached it, the heart of the spire. At the center of the chamber stood a massive crystalline structure, glowing with an ethereal light. Inside the crystal was the entity. It was no longer hidden, no longer trapped. It was awake, its immense form shifting and writhing within the crystalline prison. It was aware of them, and it was watching. "Welcome," the entity's voice reverberated through their minds, smooth and insidious. "I have waited for this moment, for you, humanity. You are the key to my freedom. Join me, and together, we will shape the galaxy. You will become part of me. Your souls will be mine." Riker's breath caught in his throat. The entity's voice was powerful, overwhelming, and for a moment, he felt the urge to step forward, to surrender himself. But he fought against it, gripping the control device in his hand. It was the only thing standing between them and the entity's control. "We will not join you," Riker said, his voice shaking but resolute. "Your reign ends here." The entity's laughter echoed in their minds, dark and echoing. "You think you can stop me? You are but children, playing at power. I am eternal. I am the source of all life. You cannot resist me." Riker took a deep breath, activating the device. "We will try." The battle for their minds, their freedom, and their souls was about to begin.